Chris Broussard's now joining us live. I mean, I'll be honest. I think Harden's shocked me how engaged he is. I mean, he's never been a great defensive player, but he's now a very good distributor. The culture is very unselfish. This Kyrie story is, at some point, you just have to come to terms with what people are. I've said this. Kevin Durant's brittle. Anthony Davis is brittle. Kyrie is inconsistent. And when I hear that story, I think this is kind of, if you're trying to redefine him, couldn't I just make the argument that Kyrie's going to have 4 or 5 of these a year, right? Like he's got a family matter to tend to.
When I first saw that he was going to be off and not knowing it was a family issue, I wanted to go off. I was ready to be like, this is ridiculous, because in the past 2 or 3 weeks, we've seen Kyrie just take a day off. I mean, they've put an injury on it, but I've been like, okay, he'll be back for the next game and he'll drop 35. And that's what he does because he's not hurt. So he's taking these games off, and I felt like they need to play as much as possible together. They don't need to be taking rest days, but it's a family matter. I know Kyrie's family. His dad's a great guy. So I'm going to, give him the benefit of the doubt. They got to deal with something for the family. But that is one of the only question marks you could have about the Nets is Kyrie's mental state, because a few, months ago when he took that 2-week hiatus or whatever you want to call it, that wasn't all family related. Some of it perhaps, but some of it was, him being upset about what happened in D.C. So I hope Kyrie can remain engaged and steady throughout the entire season. I hope that he's fine playing off the ball most of the time and letting James Harden be the quarterback and point guard, because that's when they're at their best. That's one of the few questions. If Kyrie stays engaged mentally, I don't know who's stopping him once Durant gets back.
Yeah, it's really interesting with James Harden, who, again, I used to think was kind of disengaged and selfish. When I look at James Harden now, I'm like, well, I don't trust KD's health, and Kyrie's missing more games. James Harden has come out of this thinking, I'm like, he's the heart and soul of the team. He feels very much to me like Steph Curry. I don't love him on the defensive end, but if there's injuries, if there's stuff, you could always trust Steph. Steph would always kind of bring it together. I kind of think Harden's become that. I really do think he's the heart and soul of the team right now. I really do.
Well, first of all, on the court, Colin, he is playing the point guard position. Some of the best point guard play we've seen ever. And I meant to say that, ever, not just right now. He is playing some of the best point guard that we've ever seen. He's being unselfish. He's not over dribbling. The ball is moving. Oh, and when you need him to, he'll give you 40. He is awesome. And I knew he had these skills. We saw him in Oklahoma City, when he was a young kid there with Durant and Westbrook. And you kind of saw him in Houston early on. And then when D'Antoni got there, he just became this scoring machine. But I knew he had these abilities. When they came together, this big three, I said, look, if they're smart, they'll have Harden at the point guard, Kyrie at the 2, and let Durant do his thing in the front court. They figured that out. And I'm not surprised at how well he's running the offense, because this is who he is. And to your point, the unselfishness has become contagious. That ball is moving.
Yep.
Bruce Brown, Nick Claxton, Joe Harris, Jeff Green, these guys are getting their touches, and so they're happy. So what are they doing? They're hustling on the defensive end, and that's made them a decent defensive team. I think over the last month and a half, they're about 14th in the league defensively, and that's all they need to be when they have that type of offense. So I agree with you. Harden is the heart and soul of the team, at least at this point. And look, in the playoffs, we question him, right? Will he be there in a big game? Well, you got Kyrie for
That's
that.
right. That's
and
right.
You got KD
That's right.
for that. So I think Harden will be a great distributor and still give you 20-something. So good for him that people are able to see this side of him.
Yeah, no question. I flipped. He used to drive me nuts, but I think he's been a very engaged player. And I was saying this last night, that when you get KD and Kyrie, Harden's the world's most talented insurance policy. We don't know if he's good in the postseason, but he's a great regular season guy who can totally carry a franchise. I mean, Houston's now awful. And I look and I think of this. KD has some similarities to AD hurt a lot. LeBron's now aging. Now he's much more emotionally dependable than Kyrie, but now he's had his second serious injury in 3 years. And it makes me think the Lakers need to go out and get a third star, because we know if you get into the playoffs with LeBron, you're going to be fine. But he is aging, and AD is brittle. And I wonder if the Lakers look at the Brooklyn model and think, we go get a Bradley Beal. We don't know how good he is in the postseason. We don't know. But he can get us in the playoffs if AD's hurt as LeBron ages. And that Brooklyn model now, I wonder with LeBron's injury, do the Lakers look at that and think, maybe that's the model when you have a brittle star and an aging star?
Well, no, I think that's a great point. And I also think there's another angle to it, Colin. If Brooklyn's as good as we think they are, and we all seem to think KD's just going to fit in seamlessly for the most part, then I don't know who's beating them. And just from a competitive standpoint, if this goes as a lot of people think it will, and Brooklyn wins the championship, then the Lakers are going to have to figure out how can we compete with them. So they do need to do everything they can. I think Bradley Beal would be the perfect guy. Now, I don't know how they get that done. I don't see the assets on their team to get a Bradley Beal. Obviously, you're not giving up LeBron or AD, but he would be the perfect guy for them to go get. They're going to need a big three to try to compete with that Brooklyn monster. So they got to go out and get somebody to aid their two superstars.
Listen, I've always thought that I'm not into the most valuable player award. I think it's mostly about stories and stats. But it is interesting. LeBron's now hurt. And when KD and Kyrie come back, Harden's not going to be as productive. We know that. How about let's go the opposite? Let's go for the player that is shoots mid-rangers, isn't flashy, doesn't dunk, isn't in the headlines. What about what Chris Paul has done this year? They are 20-5, best record in the league. This was a roster that none of it tied together, none of it cinched up. He has walked into this franchise. How about Chris Paul? And I don't even like MVP topics. How about him for MVP?
Well, and he makes great commercials, too, so there's that. But look, Colin, this is going to be a year where there's an odd MVP winner. Usually LeBron being out the next 3 or 4 weeks, Embiid being out 2 weeks or whatever, usually that would take them out of the race because that's too many games to miss. But the other MVP leaders aren't, their teams aren't winning a ton of games. Giannis, you usually wouldn't give him 3 in a row with his postseason struggles, but other guys are hurt. And, like I said, some guys don't have great records. Could Damian Lillard be in the run with his team in the 6th position or 5th position because he's playing so well? So it's going to be a strange MVP award. So to that point, I do think Chris Paul now is emerging as a legitimate contender for the award. Now, I had him as a contender. I don't remember the year, but when he was in New Orleans, he had a tremendous year one year. I think LeBron may have won it that year. I don't remember who won it. But he's been in the running before. But to your point, look, people look at the numbers. I think he's at about 16 points, 8 assists.
Yep.
But the impact he's having on that team is tremendous. And this is a year where it's not going to be your typical winner. And so if they end up with, I don't know if they could have the top seed in the West, but just the second seed, because Utah doesn't have a contender for MVP, he has a shot.
Yeah.
I mean, my front runner right now would be Harden. But Chris Paul is right there in the top 5 with Giannis, Jokic, Lillard. And then I think Luka, if Dallas keeps playing well and winning, he could move back into the race. But, yeah, Chris Paul is legitimately in the race.
Yeah, he's my kind of MVP. Defense, snarky, yells at people. It's my kind of guy.
Old school.
Old school.
I like the old school. I'm with you.
Yeah, good stuff. Chris,
you can't be so sensitive now.
Yeah, everybody is so sensitive these days. All right, Chris, appreciate it, buddy. Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.